To show you two things in this short video. I want to show you how to do smooth movement if you're doing the graphics project that uses a clock listener. And I also want to show you how to easily detect collisions. So both of these are actually not too bad. I think the first will probably take a little bit more time, but yeah, let's just get to it. All right, so again, I'm using the starter code that it has both the key listener and the clock. So you'll need that in order to do what we're going to do today. And I guess the first thing that I did is create a couple of variables. So I created two of them. You could do this with just one, but I think it's maybe clearer with two. So I created two variables at the top of my class. One is called x direction, the other is y direction. I'm going to use these variables to basically just, obviously, I mean, as the name implies, figure out what direction you want to move your box, all right? I believe this private rectangle player is already a part of the starter code, but if it isn't, you're going to want to create it as well. Basically, the idea behind this is just going to be a rectangle that's going to move around the screen, right, using the x and y direction variables. Finally, I added a second rectangle variable just named box. This is going to be stationary for what I'm doing, but we're going to just eventually check to see if the player rectangle collides with the box rectangle. So that's going to be kind of what we're going to try to get to. All right, so you declare them up here, in my case lines 19 through 23. After you've declared them, you actually have to give them some sort of initial value. So where that takes place is in this function called graphics panel. This is called a constructor. You don't have to know what that is right now. We'll get to that next year. But all you need to know is we're setting this player equal to a new rectangle and box also equal to a new rectangle. The x, y coordinates, the height and the width don't really matter. It's just what does matter is that you're actually creating a rectangle. All right. I'm also going to give x direction and y direction initial values of 0. So both of them will be 0. And if you look at the declaration of these two variables, you can see for the x direction, I'm going to use value -1 to indicate that my box should move left, 1 for right, 0 means it's not moving. For y direction, similarly, -1 is going to be up, 1 will be down, and 0 will be stopped. All right. And again, I'm just starting them both off at 0, which would, of course, mean that the rectangle is not moving. All right, so I'm going to run this. It's not going to really look like much of anything at the moment. But when I do run it, you can see it's just a big box with a black rectangle. I haven't even drawn my second box or the second rectangle yet. So let's do that first. So I'm going to go down to my paint component function, which is really where we do all of the drawing, right? So you can see right now, I'm just not doing a whole lot other than, well, typecasting this parameter. You don't need to worry about that. I then set the color to black and draw the player rectangle in black. I could obviously make it any color, but the important thing to understand is that I'm using the values for that rectangle for both, well, for the x, y, width, and height, right? So player, the variable has an x property, a y property, a width property, and a height property, and I'm using those values to draw my actual rectangle. I'm going to do something very similar with the other rectangle. So I'm going to change the color to, we'll just go with red. Okay, and then instead of saying player x, y, width, and height, I'm going to go with, I believe it was box. Let me just make sure I got that right. Yep, box. So I'm going to change all these players to box, right? So again, now the idea is going to be, I'm drawing a fill rec using basically the values from this box variable. All right, so let me save that and run it, and now you should see I've got my black box at the top left-hand corner and my red box kind of close to the middle, but not quite. All right. All right, so I mean, I haven't done any sort of movement yet. Let's get to that now. We'll do the movement first, and then we'll do the collision afterwards. All right, so in order to do the movement, there's really two things that you need to use, or two functions that we'll need to use, and they're all down here in these key functions, right? These are functions that are part of that key listener interface. So there's really perhaps 3 that we'll use. Well, there's only 3 in the interface. How about that, right? Key typed is a function that's called when you type a key. Typing a key basically has two parts. The first part of typing a key is pressing it. So this second function, key pressed, is called when you press down on a key. The third function listed here, key released, is called when you release a key, right? And then key type kind of takes both of those into account, all right? So we're not going to do anything with key typed. You need to leave it there. I'm going to minimize it. Oops, no, I'm not. I don't know what I just did there. There we go. I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, I'm going to minimize it because I'm not going to need to do anything with it, right? I'm just going to mess around with key pressed. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. When I press a key, if it's left arrow or right arrow, I'm going to change what the X direction variable. If I press the up or down arrow, I'm going to change the Y direction variable. So let's do just that. So I think I need to do what? Case key event dot, I believe it's VK underscore left. There we go. All right, so if they press the left key, then I'm going to set X direction equal to -1, and I'll break. Okay, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do a similar task with VK right. So if they press the right key, then I'm going to set it equal to 1. Okay, again, if they do what, the up key, I'm going to set Y direction equal to -1. And if they press the down key, I'll obviously set Y direction equal to what, +1. And oops, got to change that to down. Okay, so that's a pretty good start. I guess the last thing I need to do, well, actually, I take that back. So far, I haven't actually moved it, right? I've set the direction that I want it to move, but there isn't any actual movement taking place, right? So where are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to do that in my clock method. So in my clock method, I now have these directions being set. I'm just going to move my box based on those values, right? And then repaint. Okay, so I'm back up top to my clock, and I'm going to do this rather simply. So I'll say if X direction equals 1. Oh, and you know what? I can think of a better way to do this. I'll show you that in just a minute, right? So if X direction, equals -1, I'm going to say what? Player dot X is equal to, well, let's do it this way, minus equals 1. Okay. Else, if my direction is equal to 1, then I'm going to say player.x plus equals 1. Okay, and I kind of wonder if you might see a way already that we could streamline this. Right, you can hopefully see that if it's -1, I subtract 1. If it's +1, I add 1. I don't need to do this if statement. I don't know how to describe it other than just simply showing you. So watch this. All I'm going to do is just say X direction. I'm sorry, let me take that back. I'm going to say player.x plus equals X direction. All right, now I'm going to try to explain that because I just changed a ton of code. All right, so let me just clean up the indentation. So basically, look, X direction is either -1, 0, or +1. If X direction is 0, which it will be at the start, and you add 0 to the player's X coordinate, it's not going to change. If X direction is -1, meaning that I want to move it to the left, well, I would just be subtracting, I'd be adding -1, which have the same effect as subtracting 1, right? So if X direction is -1, it's going to end up subtracting 1. If X direction is +1, it would end up adding 1, and that would move it to the right. Now, if you say you want to do more than just 1 each time, right, I could say something like 2 times X direction or something like that, and you could really change that to any value you'd like. I'll leave it at 2 times just for right now. Anyway, I need to do something very similar with the y coordinate, right? So I'm also going to say player.y 2 times y direction, all right? So it's pretty cool, right, how simple that is. So basically this clock method is going to be called every 25, I believe, milliseconds. When the clock method is called, I'm going to add 2 times whatever my x direction is to the player's x coordinate. I'm going to add 2 times whatever the y direction is to my player's y coordinate, and then I'm going to repaint my panel. When you say this dot repaint, basically what it does is it calls this paint component function, and the paint component function is going to redraw everything starting with the black rectangle and then the red rectangle. All right, so let's try running this again. The clock function is being called every 25 milliseconds, and I'm pressing arrows and it's moving, right? So it's pretty cool. It can move diagonally, right? It can move up and down. I'm just going to show you one more thing. Like right now, I can't stop it. I can only change the direction once I start it. And maybe that's what you want. That's fine if it is. But I'm going to update it so I can also stop it by releasing a key. So I'm going to quit this. I'm going to get rid of that print statement where I'm printing clock, and I'm going to add the ability to actually stop moving either vertically or horizontally if you release a key. Okay, so that's going to take place down in my key released. And it's going to look a whole lot like my key pressed. So I'm actually just going to start by copying and pasting it, right? So the same thing is going to happen, right? When I release a key, this key release function is going to take place. The key release function is passed a parameter which basically gives you information about the key that was in fact pressed. So one of the parts of that parameter is basically the identifier for the key. And I'm going to say if they press the left or the right key. So watch this. I'm going to streamline my case statement just a bit. If they released the left or the right key, I'm going to set x direction equal to 0. If they released the up or the down key, I'm going to set my y direction equal to 0. All right, and let me run it again. All right, so here we go. I'm pressing the right key, just released it. Right key, just released it. All right, now I'm doing down and right. Okay, I let go. Everything's looking pretty good. I don't know, if I press the up and the down, it does look like it kind of defers to the last key that was pressed. So anyway, there's movement. So we're off to a good spot. Now let's do something with collision detection. All right, so you can see my black box intersected with my red box, and I want something to happen. I think what I'm going to do is when my black box hits my red box, I'm going to just send the black box back up to the left-hand corner. All right, you can obviously do whatever you want with it, but that's what I'm going to do. All right, so it's actually really easy to figure out if two rectangles intersect with each other because this rectangle class, and that's what this is a class, again, I know it's a bit beyond our scope, but yeah. The rectangle class has this function that you can use to determine if a rectangle intersects with another rectangle. So I'm going to, once again, go down to my clock method, right? Because basically this clock method's, as we've already said, called every 25 milliseconds. So I'm moving my player, and then what I want to do is just check to see if player intersects with box. So how do we do that? We'll say player, well, actually I'm going to put inside an if statement. If player dot intersects, I believe. Yep. Yeah, you can see intersects, and you pass it another rectangle. If it intersects with box, right? So that's pretty cool, I think anyway, right? We're saying if my player rectangle intersects with my box rectangle. So I'm calling this function on my player, and I'm passing as a parameter the box. So if it does intersect, then I need to move my player's x and y values. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste. So I'll say player dot x equals 0 and player dot y equals 0. Okay, oops. Let me run it and we'll see how we did. Okay, so here goes my box, moving him down. Not the most exciting game by any means, but I'm about to intersect with him, and then you can see it moved me right back. So you could do just about anything when it intersects. Obviously, if you're to create a real game, you're going to want to do something more interesting than just hitting a static red box in the middle. But that's all you'll need to know, I think, to hopefully come up with something cool. So that's it. Hope this was helpful.